For centuries, humans long dreamed of flying, from the ancient Greek mythological tale of Icarus, whose wings melted when he soared too close to the sun, to Leonardo da Vinci's 15th century sketches of mechanical flapping wings and crude helicopters. On December 17, 1903, the dream became a reality. On a stretch of sand in Kitty Hawk, two bicycle shop owners took off into a near-freezing headwind for a 12-second propeller-driven trip, a 120-foot voyage that changed the course of history. The Defying Gravity exhibit here at the North Carolina Museum of Art pays tribute to Wilbur and Orville Wright's amazing accomplishments by showing how flight influenced the visual arts.
This program is a co-production of the University of North Carolina Center for Public Television and the North Carolina Museum of Art. Additional funding for this program and funding for the exhibit, Defying Gravity, Contemporary Art in Flight, is sponsored by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association.
This program is made possible in part by contributions from UNC-TV viewers like you.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come fly with me, let's fly away.
As long as humans have gazed up to the heavens, they have contemplated and nurtured the wish to fly. The airplane not only gave us a new mode of transportation, it altered our perspective of the world, giving us a new way of seeing the Earth from the sky. The Defying Gravity exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of Art pays tribute to the Wright brothers with more than 90 pieces inspired in some way with the fantasy or reality of flight.
Okay. Would you like to try and fly this plane? Do you think it would lift off?
Defying Gravity is billed as the world's most comprehensive exhibition of contemporary art inspired by flight. It was conceived in part by Linda Johnson Doherty, who joins us. Tell us, if you would, how the whole idea for this show crystallized.
Well, when the rest of the state started planning their ideas for celebrating the Wright brothers centennial, the Art Museum felt like this was the perfect opportunity for us to do something as well. And about 5 years ago, they started thinking about ways that we could celebrate the centennial of the Wright brothers using art to represent flight and its impact on culture.
How do you think the show gives that sense of how art has been impacted by flight?
I think you see it in a huge range of ways. It's a very diverse exhibition. There are 92 works of art by 56 artists from all over the world, including 7 from North Carolina. And they all look at flight in very different ways. There are a whole group of artists in the exhibition who focus on aerial perspective and the new view that we were given of the world by flight, kind of the bird's eye view of the world. Then there's other artists who focus on kind of historical and classical images of flight, depicting airplanes kind of throughout the century and showing how aircraft and aviation has changed. And then there's artists who deal more with the kind of imaginary or dream world of flight, of fantasies of how to make yourself airborne, kind of Icarus-inspired contraptions or flying machines and inventions. And then there's another section of the show that looks at what I kind of think of as the darker side of flight, that the invention of aviation was an incredible gift to the 20th century, and it changed the way we look at the world, it changed the way we move through the world, and there are a lot of very positive things about it. But the more negative side is that only 10 years after the Wright brothers' flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903, the military started using aircraft for war, and it's an incredible weapon of destruction. So there's this element of kind of the threatening, anxiety-inducing side of flight that several artists in the exhibition explore as well.
Is there a piece in the exhibit that really resonates for you personally?
It is hard to pick, and sometimes, different days it's different pieces, but I think I would probably say that the works by Michael Richards. And the two pieces we have in our exhibition, one is titled Winged, and it's a cast of the artist's arms, and he joins the arms at the elbows, so it forms this wingspan. It almost looks like an embrace as well as a wingspan, and it's a very poetic, kind of evocative piece, and it's very quiet. The other piece is much more dramatic. It's titled Tar Baby versus Saint Sebastian, and it's a life-size cast of the artist. It's over 6 feet. It's maybe even close to 7 feet tall on its pedestal. And it's painted gold, so it's this kind of glowing, imposing figure. And the artist is dressed in the uniform of a pilot, of a Tuskegee Airman. And Saint Sebastian is the saint who's always depicted being pierced by this multitude of arrows. Well, this figure is pierced by a multitude of airplanes. And it's a very moving piece, and I think when Michael made it, which was in 1999, it was about how these pilots kind of sacrificed a lot of things for the United States and for the government, and were not really recognized for it. They were kind of martyrs in their own way, even though they survived the war. And then it's also about African American history, and you know, the Tar Baby and Brer Rabbit is a story of entrapment and of, you know, being caught someplace. And I think it reads on many different levels and is a very poetic, powerful piece. But it has a whole nother level of meaning now because Michael Richards died in the World Trade Center. He was one of 15 artists who had studios through the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. And his studio was on the 92nd floor. And he would work all night and then go during the day to work at another job. So he was in his studio when the planes hit the building, and he didn't survive. And you look at this piece now, after you know that story, and it seems like a foretelling of what happened to him, and it's quite eerie.
And what's interesting, there is a connection with Michael Richards and some of the other artists in this show, correct?
Yes, Kara Hammond, who is from North Carolina, she's from Winston-Salem, also had a studio in the World Trade Center, and she just happened not to be there that morning. But there's a beautiful painting in our exhibition that she's done, and it's titled 30,000 Feet, and it's this kind of panoramic landscape of the clouds. And she made it during the year after Michael died. And she said she realized as she was kind of in the midst of painting it, that she was painting it for him, that it was her kind of elegy for him.
It may seem commonplace now, but aviation had an enormous impact on our everyday lives, from the ease of international travel to commerce to the cross-fertilization of cultures. Flight made the world a smaller place. At the same time, it made us aware of the vastness of the world and of horizons that seem to stretch into infinity. The new perspective of seeing the Earth from the sky also had a profound impact on contemporary art.
I love Roger Brown's Living Near the Airport because, to me, unlike a lot of the other works in the exhibition that celebrate the miracle of flight, Roger's painting celebrates the banality of flight, just how much a part of our daily lives flight, airplanes have become, and it's not always positive. Living Near the Airport depicts life in almost a comic book fashion about what it's like to live near an airport. You know, Roger Brown's painting sort of suggests the kind of hassle sometimes that flight puts in our daily lives. But at the same time, it's just, this is, you know, it's normal.
Who rules, man or nature? Nature. Who rules here? You're gonna let man rule here, all right?
The other works that I really like in the show kind of connect up with Roger Brown's painting that way too. Leo Rubin finds pictures taken with a little camera just looking out of these airplane windows as the planes are coming in for a landing, to me, are like Roger Brown's passengers in his airplane, in his jet, but it's a little bit more personal in that it's a real space and you sense that there is a real person with a real life looking out as the plane is coming in for a landing. And in the same way, John Schabel's photographs taken of passengers in an airplane as they're at the airport waiting to take off. It peeks into the windows of the airplane, and you see these figures kind of in these very grainy photographs, and you see a mother and a child, a couple, and to me it's just like the same thing that I wondered when I would see an airplane land. What are these people's lives like? Are they like me? Where are they going? Where have they come from? And I think Roger's painting touches a little bit on that, only it's at a remove by these almost cartoon-like figures that he uses. It somehow suggests that distance between us on the ground and those people up there in those amazing flying machines.
While much of the exhibit focuses on contemporary themes, some of the pieces speak to the historical fascination with flight.
Panamarenko, the Belgian artist, has given us a somewhat fanciful model of the fossil of an Archaeopteryx, something that lived in the Jurassic period 180,000 years ago. He has added solar cells and microchips as if this fossil would fly if only given a little sunlight.
Panamarenko likes to call himself an artist technologist rather than a sculptor. Do you think that's an apt description, particularly for this piece?
Oh, certainly. Since he's included the solar panels and microchips, we're very much aware of contemporary technology. Yet he's given us a fanciful sculpture, if you will, of this fossil of the Archaeopteryx. So I think he has blended both skills. In classical antiquity, the bird was seen often as a messenger from the god. Athena's was an owl. Not only that, of course, the myth of Icarus, which dates to classical times, very much speaks of the earliest desire of man to partake of this wonder of flight.
For some of the artists, the wonder of flight is captured in its ability to transport, physically and metaphorically. North Carolina artist Brent Cole's mixed media installation imagines a person, in effect, becoming the body of a makeshift ancient flying machine.
You think you'd like to fly like that?
For one artist in the exhibit, the transformation of flight is captured symbolically in a series of stamps, an imaginary postal system which exists only on paper.
We have windmills in these stamps by Donald Evans, one of three major motifs: windmills, airplanes, and dirigibles. I'm just very intrigued by his technique. He works in a miniature style, which is in keeping with traditions of Northern art going back to Jan van Eyck. They're small, they're delicate, they really require one to look closely at them. Unlike most of the works in the show, which are big and almost bombastic in their own, in the approach the artist took, but these are just small gems and jewels.
And talk about what did the artist create?
Well, he created in his very short career, tragically he died in a fire in Amsterdam while very young, but he created stamps for 42 imaginary countries. And he would use a trompe-l'oeil technique to create these stamps. He did the deckled edges, the stamp themselves to cancel these stamps. All this was part of his approach to creating these stamps that would send people, if they tried, on a wild goose chase around the world to try to find these countries. I think they're a perfect addition to this show because when you think about airplane travel, it's all about travel. And prior to airplanes, the collecting of stamps was very much about travel, people imagining places far away. So for Donald Evans, he took this imagination a step further and created fictional places to visit.
One work that does seem to sum up the spirit of the exhibition, and that's Rosemary Lang's flight research photographs. That could stand as a kind of symbol of the show, because it does address the notion of celebrating creativity and the idea of empowering your imagination and encouraging your imagination to roam.